Good morning. Every city has two stories, the one we tell visitors and the ones lived by the people that are here. In Winter Haven, we see growth and development and opportunity, and that's all real. But there's another story happening quietly alongside of it. Families are struggling, neighbors are feeling unseen, and communities are searching for hope. Today's episode isn't about charity, it's about dignity and relationships and what happens when a community decides that no one gets left behind. Today on Release the Kraken, we're sitting down with Brad Beatty, Managing Director of Heart for Winter Haven, a man who believes in relieving poverty and believes that it doesn't start with money, it starts with people. Brad, before we talk about programs or plans, let's talk about you. Where did your story begin?
Well, beginning of the beginning was in Lake Wales Hospital. I grew up in Babson Park and uh, then moved here. My parents divorced, moved here to Winter Haven when I was in seventh grade.
Okay.
Yeah. Went away to college in the Navy and started a family and then brought the family back here home to Winter Haven back
Nice.
in 2009. But yeah, Winter Haven is home. Polk County is my home. And so glad to be able to serve in our community.
Right. Yeah. And it's so good to see how many people have left Polk County and come back because
Yeah.
it is home. So, every community has people that are doing hard work, but that work doesn't always make headlines, but it does change lives. So today we want to sit down and really talk about, where the hard work goes and maybe it's done in the shadows.
Mm.
But we want to bring that to light so that more people are aware of the mission of Heart for Winter Haven
Yeah.
and the strides that you guys are making. So let's talk about what are some, did you have any early exposure to poverty that really made you want to focus on this mission?
Yeah. Great question. What comes to mind, my earliest memories in Babson Park, back then it wasn't filled up with people who were retiring there, building houses on the lake. And there was definitely and literally two sides of the tracks.
Right.
And I had friends on both sides. We lived sort of out in the country on a dirt road. But yeah, it dawned on me. I started seeing the differences. And I think throughout my life, had that lens of seeing, boy, all the kids in the AP classes come from pretty well-to-do families,
Right.
and seeing that opportunity wasn't like equally distributed. So there were some differences, and just wondering why that was, and then of course being curious about, how could that be different?
Yeah. I think, after a while of seeing things like that, you kind of get into the psychology of what can cause,
Yeah, yeah,
someone to have less opportunity. And, we definitely see people that break through those cycles,
uh-huh.
but it takes work and it takes effort. And sometimes it takes someone on the outside to help give them a little push.
Yeah, and I mean, we call that change theory. You're nailing it. And what leads to significant change in our lives? And I would say it's always something external to ourselves, that we are really dependent on one another.
Right.
Which, like back to your point about community, I think that's why that's so
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, I agree. And, of course, we know this is a faith driven organization. So tell me a little bit about your faith and, have you always been, a believer, or was there a moment in your life that really made a change?
Yes and yes. So I grew up going to Good Shepherd Episcopal Church in Lake Wales, and it was absolutely foundational for me in so many ways. And I didn't realize it until I was out in the Navy, um, in the Red Sea during the Gulf War, and people were asking questions of faith, and I knew some of those answers. And I didn't know how I knew it because I had never read the whole Bible
Right.
before that I thought. But just prior to getting commissioned in the Navy, I came to a kind of a different level of faith. I don't even know the words to
Mm.
use, but was sort of reawakened to my faith
Right.
my senior year at Vandy. And so I always kind of joked I was commissioned in two ways, in the Navy and then in God's
Yeah.
holy army. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. So were there specific moments in your life that kind of drove you towards working with community and instead of just, you know, being and living in a community and really driven to help community?
Yeah, I think at that time in the Navy, I worked in the engineering division, even though I was a history major. That's just what the Navy does. But I had these great guys, and it was all guys at that time, who so smart, so capable when we're at sea.
Right.
But their lives when we're in port were a little less than.
Maybe not so desirable.
Yeah, but what kind of awakened in me was like, oh, because you, as a division officer, you have to kind of take care of your people, and I realized like I don't know what you call this, but I sort of like this. I
Right.
like seeing people kind of become awakened to their purpose
Right.
and creating a more supportive network. And the Navy is a great community as well.
Right.
So experiencing that, seeing the difference between when they're with their ship life and their people versus when they're just, out
Right.
of town,
Yeah.
how that falls apart. So
I can see that.
yeah,
Yeah, that's for sure. So nonprofit leadership, it's not an easy path, and especially one that is donor driven.
yeah.
What keeps you going when the work starts feeling kind of heavy?
Um, I really, my faith and just remembering what God's done all this time. I was just having this discussion yesterday, um, with one of my founding board members, and he was remembering a time when we had a board meeting and we didn't know how we are going to make the budget, um, and everything seemed so up in the air.
Right.
And then look today, where uh, our budget's grown significantly. We have a lot of staff we didn't have back then, and just to see the things that we've been able to do in the community. So I think that, and having those people around me, again, that's community to remind
Right.
me of those times about God's faithfulness and that He's still good and still present. So I think that's a big part of it. And yeah, just waking up with the purpose of this is bigger than me. It's
Right.
bigger than Heart for Winter Haven. But the belief that if we just get out and talk to one more person, and not really about just the donation of their money,
Right.
but their engagement with the problem
Right.
to see what we're seeing, and then let their hearts be moved to act
Yeah.
in some way.
Yeah. And I can definitely understand that. I build my business the same way, and I'm not a nonprofit, but as a startup, it's hard. There are days when you just want to give up.
Mhm.
It's like, if this, if this invoice will get paid, then I can
Yeah.
pay my next bill. And
Yeah.
it's tough, but I have faith in God. I put it in His hands. I said, I know this is the purpose that I've been put here for. Along with building our nonprofit, the Winter Haven Tech Council, to help children and young adults build a career in this environment. And so, I kind of understand that wholeheartedly, and really you have to have faith in God and in a higher power that it's going to be okay. It's
Yeah.
going to be tough,
Yeah.
but if you dig in and do the right thing, it's going to come around.
But there's really no difference between a non-for-profit
No.
and a for-profit, except how you file your taxes,
Right.
and what you can do with the money at the end of it.
Right.
Like, I can't just give myself a big bonus.
Right.
Right. And there's, but other than that, yeah, you have to be entrepreneurial. You monetize a
Yeah.
little differently, but you have a service or you have a product that you're trying to provide
Absolutely.
and to solve a problem.
Yeah.
Right? And we're just in this people problem solving
Right.
business.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny because a lot of times we think of, working with a charitable organization or a mission driven organization, they need our money, but we also need to think about the fact that those organizations need time.
Yeah.
They need
Yeah.
people. They need, someone that's maybe they don't have the resources to give money, but they have the resources to give of themselves.
hmm
And that's almost as important as the monetary donations.
I'd say that, the one commodity we have that we all have the same amount of is time. Your one, it might be a different length than my one,
Right.
but that's all we each have. And
Right.
so when people give their time, to me, that really is the bigger thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause you can't make more of it.
Right.
You can't
Right.
store it up in the bank for
Right.
later
Yeah.
on.
We need money to run the organizations, but we also need people that are willing to dig in and do the hard work and the good work.
Yeah.
So we know you're a faithful servant of the Lord. How does faith really shape the way you lead? Not just spiritually, but practically inside an organization.
So I hope that I'm learning to be more curious and a better listener to people. So I do have a pretty open door with people, and I feel like I have a responsibility. I think every leader does, to help their employees to grow, or our donors or our clients. Like, I think we're all in this together. But,
Right.
the way that we have defined poverty is that it's really relationally based.
Mhm.
And so if that's and it's based on our brokenness and our belief that we're all broken. So in some capacity, some way, we all have poverty in our lives. So I think, my job as a leader is to bring healing where I can.
Right.
And I think that the brokenness comes mostly through relationship, but also the healing does.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. There are a lot of us that, you know, maybe we don't have money, but we have people around us,
Mhm.
and that makes you rich in a different way,
That's right.
and you maybe don't notice,
Yeah.
the lack of money so much when you do have good relationships, a strong relationship with the Lord, and you're doing things for the community, and as long as you can pay your bills and feed your family,
hmm
that's really what's important.
hmm
So that's fantastic. I love to hear that. So a lot of organizations really, they try to fix poverty, but they don't try to heal the community. Um, so I think that's probably kind of why Heart for Winter Haven exists, is to repair communities and build a better culture for the
Yeah.
for the area.
Yeah. We think that community is really that special magic ingredient to anything that we do that leads to real transformation, or that change I talked about. And that transformation is ultimately God's business.
Hmm.
But if we can, invite people into community, that's where He promises to meet us when we gather together. And
Right.
so a lot of what we see is the people that we're serving, they come from out of the area, or their families have, just through years of economic poverty or hardship or addiction, don't have that supportive quality, and so they're kind of doing life alone. So,
Right.
and they don't know how to build their own community, because people aren't joining churches or clubs or that kind of thing as much as they used to in the past.
Right.
So when we have them come into that, that's there's something that just takes place between that and them learning these new ideas, whether it's related to their financial literacy and how to use the resources God's given us, or how work is not a curse, it's a blessing, and how it provides us with purpose. And it's one of the main ways that we actually worship Him. Which
Right.
is that's a big idea.
Right.
And so all that stuff combines to kind of help them engage life differently and grow in their own community. So we have just seen that change so often. We know it's possible, and it's made us believe that this word finitude, right? Our immortality. My wife and I were talking about that this morning. Um, Poverty has finitude to it.
Mm.
It has a beginning, so it has to have an end. So poverty and homelessness and those kinds of things are not impossible things.
Right.
And God said that, right? With Him, it's all possible.
Right.
And he even said when his people gather together, that they can do these magnificent things like at the Tower of Babel. And then Jesus said, "This stuff I'm doing, you're going to do even greater things." So all that just gives me hope to think, okay, um, first of all, this is a finite problem, so it has to be solvable.
Right.
It's man created. Um, so what's that look like?
Right.
And I think he's also given us a real strategy and an understanding of what that would look like here in Winter Haven.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So what are the root issues that you see here in Winter Haven that a lot of people really overlook when it comes to this
Yeah.
problem?
So for us, when we talk homelessness, not so much of the problem that's been highlighted here in town lately, the single person who maybe they're, experiencing addiction or mental health problems. Uh, we're thinking of this invisible problem of family homelessness that you don't see. Like
Right.
you said that they're unseen. So I mean that's one of the kind of the main issues is that it's a problem that is not out in front of us and it
Right.
doesn't bother us because we're not encountering it.
Right. Yeah, it may not be the lonely person on the bench in the park.
Yeah.
It could be an entire family that's
Yeah.
living in an orange grove
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah. I met this great group in Lakeland yesterday that goes into Lakeland High School and they just bring lunch to the kids who the school board has to, by federal law, identify the kids that are homeless. And it's called the Hearth Project here in Polk County, and they do a great job. But this group just brings lunch to these kids once a week and gets to know them. I mean, that's their whole thing. And then back, at their church, they're praying for them. And they told me a story of this kid saying, why is everybody here? And they said, it's because you're part of Hearth. And he said, what's Hearth? He said, it has to do with housing. So they try to avoid the word homeless.
Right.
And he looked around and he said, oh, so I'm not the only one. There's football players and track runners and cheerleaders and band people in the band, people I recognize.
Right.
They're here too. So it was a revelation.
Yeah. And I think what a lot of people don't really think about is everyone is 1 month away from being in that situation.
Yeah.
So many of us, you know, especially now with, the economy the way it is, everybody, they have one bad month and they could be in the same situation. So I think it's important that we as a community really open up our heart to these folks and really, work to help solve the problem. It's a big problem, but it's solvable. And we want to make these things, I think, and probably in your opinion too, as temporary as possible.
Yes. Yeah. So temporary, short duration, and non-reoccurring. So the definition of what we want to get to is the word's called functional zero. So absolute zero
Right.
is I think what people react to when they say we're going to end child homelessness. But functional zero means as a community, we have the capacity as people enter to exit them in a short duration of time and then help them experience stabilization. And we can get to that functional zero. And we're working at building that system of care here in Winter Haven to do that. And we got great community partners. And, as we were talking earlier before we started, just more engagement.
Right.
We had a great meeting, the people out at American Vulcan. We had a great call with them. They've gotten very involved with our pantry that we help run at Winter Haven High School.
Okay.
And we're just looking to engage all of our community, those who feel called to it. If, see the problem and then respond to what your heart tells you.
Yeah.
That's sort of love begins with looking and then reacting to that.
Right. I agree. So what does success really look like for Heart for Winter Haven? What's your long-term goal?
Well, our long-term goal is, like we said, to get to that functional zero
Right.
with child homelessness. Last year, we had 527 students in Winter Haven public schools that were homeless at some time. That includes mostly kids living with their families. The majority of those families are in doubled up or tripled up situations where the whole family's in one bedroom
Oh, okay.
at somebody else's houses. But some of them are in hotels, and then some are out in their cars or camping in the woods or
Right.
sleeping on park benches. We've encountered all those. And then there's this other minority that seems to be growing this year of unaccompanied youth.
Oh, wow.
So they're kids that are living life on their own.
Wow. And what age ranges have you seen in that situation?
The ones we have seen are older teens.
Okay.
Because we're at the high school twice a week.
Okay.
But the Hearts liaison told us, I think last year they had an 8-year-old who, for all kinds of reasons, maybe single mom goes in the hospital and there's no family around,
Right.
but I mean, those kinds of situations happen, and there are mechanisms in place, right, to provide shelter for them.
Right.
But that kind of institutionalization is what we're trying to avoid.
Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of times maybe people just don't know where to reach out.
Yeah, that's
Um,
right.
or they're embarrassed. I think
Yes,
pride kills a lot of things.
that's so you're right on.
And we are a community. We should feel okay to go to our neighbor or to our friends and
Yeah.
say, "Listen, I'm having a really, really hard time. Um, can you point me in the right direction, or do you have any recommendations, or whatever?" And I think growing up as a kid, we knew all our neighbors,
Yeah,
and now I just don't see that community anymore. Everybody's so busy and coming and going, and nobody even waves. And
mm,
you live in a community with an HOA, and all they do is complain because your garbage
right.
can was out 5 minutes too long, and the world's become harsh.
Yeah,
Um,
you're speaking my language.
it's sad.
We got to know our neighbors before we can love our neighbors.
Right.
And you're right on. That's really the place to start, is just how can we create more community within the little pockets of community we have?
Right.
Because
Right.
it's really happening, like you said, all over we see all different kind of economic strata. You talked about one of the root causes of it. I mean, I think that disconnectedness is the biggest part. But then, yeah, just not having that safety net of people around you. Like, I
Right.
know I'm not going homeless because I'm real involved with the church.
Right.
We take care of people at the church. We take care of other people too. But if you're a member,
Right.
if you're
You are
part of
family.
it, that's
family.
you have that familyness, and
Right.
that's so valuable. A lot of people even that work here come from outside of the community. So
Yeah.
connecting people, helping them understand that there is no shame in it. I think we've had some trouble with parents returning calls because I think there's this idea that they're going to get in trouble,
Right.
that homelessness will lead to their kids getting taken away or something like that, and that can't be farther from the truth. Like, if we can just let people know, particularly a group like ours, but just in general, we want to help. We want to preserve
Right.
families, and we have help for them. And some of that's related to just housing costs, but a lot of it is how can we help you build the stability that has been missing.
Right.
So we spend a lot of time thinking about family, with the elements of familyness and of home. What does it mean to like really live in a home, or the biblical word is abide, right?
Right.
How do we abide? And we have supported programs in educational, groups and that stuff like that to help that get solved and create that stability, both financially, but also within the context. So mental health is a big
Yeah.
part of what we provide.
Yeah.
In family relationships we have a licensed marriage and family therapist on
Okay.
staff.
Yeah. And I think, a little earlier you mentioned something that's so important, and it's something that I look at doing as I'm building my business, but processes. are
Mm.
so important to be able to build repeatable processes within an organization. Not only helps drive your mission, but makes your mission more scalable
Yes.
because you can bring more people in. The process is already in place. You
Yeah.
don't have to teach them some willy nilly idea
Mhm.
that you're going off of. You've seen success from these processes. So we're going to keep moving those processes forward and build off of those.
Yeah.
And building those repeatable processes is so critical in any organization, but especially something that's so mission driven.
Yes.
And you've got um, correlating data that says these processes
Right on.
are successful.
Yeah, and I mentioned we talked about that earlier too. We have a specific strategy we follow that's connected to a group that has seen uh, functional zero with chronic homelessness, which is generally what we think of, veterans homelessness. Even places like Atlanta have had 50 and 60% reduction
Oh
in
wow!
their homeless numbers by following this strategy. First part of that is having a by name list. And that by name list is capturing the data that's relevant to that person's story, really understanding it. And
Right,
I mentioned this to you that that's where we struggle. So we're real good with people and getting that information. How do you sort and coalesce that data into
right,
something that's really usable? Because one of the other main strategic points is making strategic decisions based that are data driven, and that's where we need the help of our community too,
right.
because that stuff, it's expensive for us to build out. We don't have the expertise, and we need folks in your
Right.
line of business to help us with that.
Right. And it's really hard to make good data driven decisions when your data is in silos and you've got data over here and data over here
We
and data over
spreadsheet
here.
stuff, right? I mean, that's what we
Yeah.
know, and so it's yeah, it's just we have all this data, but we don't have a way to sort through it and begin to understand it.
Right.
Because we know, we want to push our resources towards those things that are making a difference. One of the reasons we stick with those programs, I mentioned Jobs for Life and Faith and Finances, because in exit interviews from people that have done really well, when we ask them what made the difference for you, it was community.
Mm.
It was the community they experienced in those classes. And so we like, oh, we got to focus more on that. It's really not just about the $2,000 for back rent or
Right.
just the money situation.
Right.
Although money is a real factor in
Right.
this, it really is about helping people experience that healing power of community.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I mean, I think we've talked extensively about how important community is, and that's just pure,
Yeah.
example of it. So if Winter Haven became a national example of community transformation, what would be different? What do we think we have to do to make ourselves that example?
Yeah, I think we have all the elements, right? Winter Haven, the thing I love about it is how relational everybody is. Anytime I mean, you remember how we got started in this with the city? It was because when Brad Dantzler was mayor, he and I had gotten to know each other. We had lunch, and he said, "Hey, can you help me understand what you're talking about? Student homelessness, child homelessness." And that began a process. And we always ask that question in Winter Haven, like, who else needs to be here? We don't say, you know, what resources, how much money, it's who.
Right.
Even when we were talking about the tech council, who needs to be a part of this?
Right.
So I think that relational basis really is a strength that we have. And then we also have very generous community. Um, I think just engaging more people in this idea that this problem exists and is solvable. Sometimes I think, um, even in the church, we use scripture to kind of ignore things. We'll say, Jesus made these statements, which he made them. So, I mean, they're there. The poor you'll always have with you. Okay. But he also said, when you have a party, don't invite your friends that, are going to invite you to a party. Go out on the streets, go to the margins and
Right.
bring people in. So there's all this that's going on. I think when we commit as citizens to see this problem and say, hey, we can do we can do something about this if we have a mind to,
Right.
and to engage with that definition of solvability,
Right.
and not just say, well, this always has been, so it always will be.
Right.
Homelessness has a start date.
Right.
I mean, there, we've had vagrants, we've had hobos and bums through the years, the old language, but really our understanding of this modern day homelessness starts, in the early '80s.
Yeah.
So again, everything that has a beginning has to have an end.
I agree. So, what do you think it looks like when we get churches and businesses and schools and nonprofits to stop working in these silos and really function as a community and come together to work on all the problems, not just the homelessness and
Sure.
poverty problems, but all the problems that we have?
I think, yeah, I mean, it'll be different, and I think there's a willingness to do that. I think we just have to re-engage with that, and find some ways to, Congress around it, to
Right.
get together. There's been some great groups. Polk Vision does that, over the whole county. I think there's room for us to do that here just locally. Southeastern University just started the Lift Institute, which Sarah Beth Wyatt, who's a school board member, she's over that. They've got offices right across the street at the
Okay.
old BB&T.
Oh.
So there's I can see kind of the pieces getting set on the board
Right.
to do that.
Right.
And then I would say our city has a great opportunity, and our city government has always been leaders in those quality of life issues, because it really is a quality of life
Yeah.
issue. Well, there'll be less crime. Student success goes way up just with housing stability.
Right.
Can you imagine trying to learn how to read from a dome light in your car,
Wow.
or in a busy, overcrowded, rent hotel
Right.
that's not safe for kids? There's lots of adults around,
Yeah.
let alone being outside, or learn algebra or calculus or any of the things.
Right.
We know that literacy goes up, graduation goes up, crime goes down, and homelessness as adults goes down,
Right.
because the majority of people that are homeless as adults experienced it as children. So let's take away that experience
Right.
and see how things look different.
Right. Right.
I'm pretty convinced.
Yeah. And, we have some pretty good organizations here in town that working hard on downtown revitalization, getting rid of blight and unsightly areas and bringing community together. And I think that's so important. You leave the abandoned buildings, and that just opens up opportunity for, bad behavior, and people don't want to be around it. So
Sure.
then, the more and more businesses go out. And I think it's a perpetual problem, that we can put the brakes on,
Yeah.
I think. And I think as a community, Winter Haven as a whole, I think is doing a fantastic job of working
Really.
on that, and, Polk County as well. But one of the important things I think that we need to talk about is, how do we raise leaders within the community? Not just residents. How do we raise leaders for people that don't want to just be here, but want to really serve the community?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Tabitha in my office. Getting her involved in the Winter Haven leadership class. I think identifying those young leaders who have passion and desire, and investing in them,
Right.
but actively looking for those leaders and supporting those ideas. Kids are going to have ideas to solve problems like that haven't even thought of.
Right.
There's a panel coming up Friday at Hope Pres on food insecurity, and I'm sure it's really interesting. I haven't read or seen the documentary they're going to talk about, but Amazon can solve food insecurity faster than food pantries.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're already delivering food.
Right.
I mean, the problem is it's accessibility, not just affordability.
Right.
And there's the logistical part of it, and
Right.
those are going to be the kind of things that are going to help us to grow. And there's other things like that related to family homelessness that haven't
Right.
even thought of yet.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. If you can, you know, you've got a homeless family, you know, they need groceries. It's difficult to get to them.
Hmm.
What if we can just ship it directly to them,
Yes. Yeah.
or, what if the mother needs formula and
Sure.
we can just get it to them.
Yeah.
That's
There's some great portals like that. Care Portal is one where identify a need and vet it, and then you can kind of meet that need. Meet the need actually is another one.
right.
And I've heard of some other ones up north where you can just ship food. You can, I'm going to buy 10 cases of this, and it kind of goes out to
Yeah.
it gets
Especially,
drop shipped.
Polk County still has a lot of really rural areas.
Yeah.
So it's hard for some of those people, especially, maybe they've got a car, but maybe they don't have gas money this week
Or they're elderly or they're
right.
disabled. There's lots of reasons why, those kinds of solutions are better than just, nothing against food pantries.
Right.
That's not what I'm saying. There's additional ways that we
Right.
gotta look
Yeah.
at this problem.
Yeah. Not everybody has the resource to get to that food pantry. I know there's some in Auburndale where there'll be car lines just backed up.
Yeah.
Not everybody has a car.
Yeah.
Not everybody
Yeah.
can get those supplies back to their
That's right.
homes. So yeah, we've got to come up with more ways for sure. Um, for someone who's listening, and we talked about this a little bit, that can't afford to donate and they really want to help, how can they be a part of the mission, and what kind of help do you guys need?
Yeah. So since people is our business, and then relationships we think is really the crux of the matter. We need people who are just willing to spend their time. Really just who are familiar with the workplace and the marketplace. You don't have to have any special HR background to just know that there's basics to work. You show up on time, you work the whole time, you be teachable, do it the way your employer wants it, and you get along with people.
Right.
And to normalize that conversation with people who are new to the workplace.
Yeah.
And then just be a friend and don't try to solve problems. Just try to answer questions and
Yeah.
walk with people. One of my favorite books called Walking with the Poor. And I think it's a better kind of visual than some of the others that we've talked about how we help people up or down or whatever. Cause we're really just fellow journeymen. We're just
Right.
walking the same path, and maybe I'm a half step ahead of this area but I think people ultimately we need companionship. And there's that African proverb, if you want to get there fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together.
Right.
Go in a group. And we want to go far. We don't want to just go fast.
Yeah, for sure. So we've talked about this a little bit, but education and job readiness, how do they kind of fit in that cycle of breaking, the stereotype of poverty? And I know you guys offer some pretty outstanding programs for reskilling people to get ready for the next generation of job, or, maybe giving them skills for the first time.
Yeah, those employability skills and the basics of how to get in, get it up to the interview, and then to get through the interview, but then to hold on to the job.
Right.
Those are the things we've mostly focused on. Lately, we've also worked on some of the workplace skills. Like we just had a class. One of our board members, Bunny Reeves, is a medical biller and coder. She taught a class on how to learn to do that, so you can make a decent living doing
Right.
that. So she took
And from home.
and from home, yeah. And it's a career pathway you can grow. So we're doing more and more of those kinds of things, and we're talking with the Vulcan people yesterday. They have really robust program for developing people with,
CNC and all
all
that.
the machining
Right.
and welding and all the stuff they do. Um, so we're looking for more of those kinds of things too, where we can, kind of take people in hand and provide them with, upskill them a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think just, back to that question, how to get involved, like we're, involved in those kind of programs, find ways to, support these families and to see, we want to one day help, with your guys' help, come up with an app where if you're walking around or you're talking with somebody and they need help, you can pop open the app and somehow connect them
Right.
us into other groups. I mean,
Yeah.
all that stuff's so within our grasp now.
Right.
We just got to take the time to figure out how to work.
Yeah.
And but then you can just keep it about the relationship and
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because sometimes people just need somebody to talk to.
100%
And
of
there's
the
nobody
time.
around them, and it's feeling lonely
Yeah,
can change your entire mindset,
yeah,
and you don't want to do anything, and so it's like a downward spiral
yeah.
into a place that you really don't want to be.
Yeah, you remember probably about 10 years ago in the UK, they started a new department. They call them ministries, right? But a minister of loneliness.
Oh wow.
And I know our own Surgeon General said that's one of the kind of worst kind of upcoming uh, diseases of our nation is loneliness. So yeah, just asking that question. Hey, what's your story?
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
you know,
How you doing?
yeah.
What
How do you end
what's
up
on
in
your
Winter
mind?
Haven?
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What's going on instead of just what do you want? What do you need? It's easy to keep it transactional, and I think even sometimes when you encounter people, that's just what they want it to be about too.
Yeah.
But like just being open to that. That's somebody's daughter or son or
Yeah.
cousin.
And maybe even some sort of form of app like that could give someone's a little bit of anonymity.
Yeah,
Maybe they're not quite ready to open up all the way, but they want to talk.
that's right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I could see problems in that too. But
Yeah. We can always be blow back on stuff, but we got to try
right.
some
Yeah,
things.
we've got to definitely collaborate and think of some ways that we can
we can work it out.
do something. So if you could say one thing directly to the people of Winter Haven, what would that be?
Gosh, Winter Haven. I know so many of you are like me. You love our community, and those who've been around a long time. You remember in springtime and the fall when the orange blossoms
Hmm.
were blooming. You could just kind of smell that sweet smell, um, in the air. But I think there's another way we can kind of create that kind of fragrance is just the sweetness of the community we have and drawing near and caring for our neighbors and for one another. There's something really beautiful and sweet about that. So we want to invite you at Heart for Winter Haven to come be a part of what we're doing, or help you to find your passion in that of where where you feel most purpose in serving. But do it from a place. We want to help you do it from an informed place of what is working and how what real help is like. So we want to invite you to be a part of this. See this problem, come learn about it, and then if you feel moved, come and join us.
Well, Brad, thank you for joining me today. Folks, if you want to know more about Heart for Winter Haven, we'll put a link in the description of this podcast. And, engage with the community, be a neighbor, and give back. And thank you. And we'll see you again on Release the Kraken.